Anyway, House District 56, this is the Henrico, Louisa County, Goochland area. And this is the seat represented by the retiring Peter Farrell. Very young, but he's had enough. And there's 6 Republicans in this race, and it's wide open. Matt Pinsker, a lawyer, public speaker, former Navy SEAL. John McGuire, one of the top candidates, along with Craven Craig, George Goodwin. There's a gentleman, Pendergrass. He isn't going to win. And I think there might be one more that I'm missing. Dr. Dakar. Now, I had the opportunity to see all 6 of them at a forum in Louisa County in Mineral, Georgia, about a week ago, last week. And it was very interesting. I thought George Goodwin did very well. Now, he is with us now. George Goodwin, the former legislative aide to Tom Garrett, who is now in Congress, and the present legislative aide in Richmond to State Senator from the Lynchburg area, Mark Peake, who got elected in Tom Garrett's old seat in a special election last January. So I hope I've framed that. And George Goodwin, very knowledgeable about what goes on in Richmond, and a fine candidate, did a fine job at that forum. Good to have you with us, George Goodwin. Welcome back, I should say.
Can you hear me?
Yes, sir. Loud and clear.
Great to be on the show again.
Yes, good to have you. Now, one of the things you did at the forum, and I want you to share this with our audience, which I thought was very effective, the forum in Mineral, Virginia, is you talked about experience and the value of constituent services. Now, when you run for one of these seats, George, nobody really talks about what the constituent service will be. And you had a couple of stories, one of them in particular, how you stepped in for a tow truck driver within your area. But I want you to comment on that story and why serving your constituents in that way matters.
Oh, absolutely. First of all, John, I hope you had a great Memorial Day weekend.
Thank you. Hope you had one too.
I did. Renee and I went to services yesterday, remembering our fallen dead, and actually coming back home and seeing people visiting cemeteries. It's good that Virginians remember what that day is for and realize that the only way we can repay that debt is to remember. And I was heartened. But to talk about constituent services, I have a page on my website that talks about, it has testimonials from constituents all over the district where I've stepped in and helped them when they found themselves in straits with the government. And the story that you're talking about actually was a bill that had an unintended consequence that would have taken away the operator's license from tow truck drivers all over the state if they had had a felony conviction at any point in their life. And I called in the representative of the tow truck drivers and said, I'm reading this bill. How many people are affected by it? And he basically said, we don't know because they will lose their license when they go up to renew them. But we estimate somewhere in the neighborhood of 30 to 50 in your district. I said, find them. And that's when I met a fellow from Goochland. Now, this man had a felony conviction when he was a very young man. It was a violation that would not be a felony today. He went on to serve 2 tours in Vietnam, honorably discharged from the Army, and he had been operating a tow truck for more than 30 years without any incident. We told his story to representatives of the Virginia State Police who oversee that program,
right,
AAA, and representatives of the insurance industry, and we sat down and worked out amendments to that bill that would achieve the intended consequence but eliminate the unintended consequence. When that bill went through subcommittee and committee with strong bipartisan support, we felt good that we had done a great job on that bill.
Right.
And when I walked out of the committee, this gentleman followed me out, and he said, sir, I need to tell you, I've never seen anyone take on someone else's cause the way you've taken on mine. Mm-hmm. And he handed me his business card, and he says, I'm going to talk to my brothers, and you'll never have to pay for a tow the rest of your life. And I said, I'm glad it means that much to you, and I'm even more glad that it worked out. But I can't accept it. There's a little issue here called ethics
Right.
And besides, I was just doing my job. And it's stories like that, John, that make you glad you're there, that you're the person there at the time in the right place and know what to do.
All right, George, look, there's 6 candidates in this race. 5 of them I'm going to call top-tier candidates. This thing's wide open. Anybody can win. You're likely to get outspent in this race by at least several of the other candidates. How do you win?
Contacting people directly. I sit down every day and I write letters. I make phone calls. And I visit places where I can run into the most people. So when I am exposed to people, I win their vote. I have seen that for the last 75 days, and I will continue that for the last 2 weeks.
What is it about your experience as a legislative aide that you think differentiates you from some of the others? I mean, you see with the forum, it's like, okay, you know how to make the sausage, you know how to make a bill, but in kind of the change environment we're in, why does that matter? I mean, how is that going to resonate with people, George?
Oh, I'll tell you exactly why. Because when you report to Richmond, they don't issue you a learner's permit. You're put behind the wheel of a muscle car that is fueled by approximately 3,000 bills. Mm-hmm. They don't give you time to learn how to operate it. They expect you to operate it. And I've had constituents come down early on, my first year down there, and their question is not, how are you settling in? Are you understanding how things are going on? No, they have real issues, and they want you to represent them. Mm-hmm. You don't have time to learn this job. I already know how to do it, and it will make a difference.
All right, so tell me about George Goodwin, your differences with some of the other leading candidates. And I'm going to just give you a candidate name. I know this is hard, but I'm trying to give you an opportunity with our listening audience to differentiate yourself from the pack, because basically if you get 28%, somebody's going to win this race. You don't need a majority. So I'm going to mention a couple names. I want the first thing that comes to mind that differentiates the George Goodwin campaign from some of the other leading candidates. For instance, George Goodwin, Graven, Craig. Why should somebody vote for George Goodwin and not Craig?
You know, when I look at every one of the people that are running, and these are good people, and I made this point on Wednesday when we had the candidate forum that you attended. This primary is not so much about ideals, because we're all Republicans. We all share the same or similar values. And in fact, John, you asked a question at that forum when it was opened up to the floor,
right.
And we actually had all candidates, Republican and Democrats, agree.
All 8 of them, correct.
Yes. And, you know, it's amazing. The difference in a primary is who can represent you best. That's going to make you stand out from everybody else. And that's where my experience comes in. And it's where it matters that I have lived in this district my entire life. My family has been in this district for generations. I have not only understand the values, I've lived them, and I know how to represent them in the General Assembly.
All right, so what would be your top priority, George, if you get elected and you take office January 2018? What would be one of your top priorities?
Mandates, without a question. Mandates slow our progress down in this state.
Mandates for what?
Mandates on local government, mandates on individuals, mandates on businesses. We are very, very good at telling people exactly how they must do something. Let me tell you a story about mandates and how they impact businessmen and individuals. There's a developer that I talked to several months ago. He had a professional engineer put together a site plan, and they sent that to Department of Environmental Quality, DEQ.
Right.
The answer that they got back was not that it was right, not that it was wrong, approved or disapproved. The answer they got back was, we prefer you use a different methodology. Now, John, let me ask you, is the purpose of a state agency to make work easier on them or on the constituent? I think that our agencies in overseeing regulations should look at the Virginians as clients, not as a workload. And we've missed that somehow. Not only are we putting mandates on people that slow them down, the way we administer those mandates slows them down.
Right.
We've got to address it. We have fallen from a top 3 state, best state to do business, to double digits. In the S&P 500 just this past December, reduced our outlook from stable to negative. That threatens our bond rating. We have got to address mandates and make this a better business environment for growth in Virginia.
Well, there's no question about that. All right, George, let's get to some real issues here. Roads, transportation. There's only 3 ways to go. 1, tolls. 2, taxes. 3, don't do anything. You got to favor one of these. Which is it?
Well, certainly doing nothing is not an option. My choice out of those 3 is to go to a fee-for-service, which is tolls.
Right.
I will not support a gas tax increase. You and I have discussed this before. That tax disproportionately targets rural Virginians. Because out here, we have to drive to do anything. Mm-hmm. We drive 5 miles to go to church.
Right.
12, 15 miles to go get our groceries or to attend school. Mm-hmm. And it's not unusual for us out here to drive 40, 50 miles each way to go to work. Mm-hmm. We don't have subsidized transit in rural Virginia. We don't have buses. We don't have rails that are paid for with public money. It comes out of our pocket. Mm-hmm. So I will not support an increase in gas tax ever.
So in your mind, if you want to drive the road, pay the toll.
If you are using that road, directly benefit from that road, yes, you pay for that road.
Even though Senator Wagner says when you go the toll route, you pay 3 to 5x the actual cost of the road, and you pay it in perpetuity.
And that's because you can't levy that tax on the rest of Virginia that are not using those roads every day. Absolutely.
All right. Well, that's a position, and I appreciate that. All right. Ed Gillespie, look, George, he's going to be the nominee, okay? When it's all said and done, Ed is going to win. There's only 13 days, 14 days remaining. Ed's going to be the nominee. He's proposed a 10% income tax reduction. If you were in the House and Ed was elected governor and he proposed that in January of 2018, is that something you would be comfortable getting behind? Why or why not?
I would be comfortable. I've read the tax plans of all of our candidates running for governor on the Republican side. I do think we need to do tax reform, but we have to couple cost reduction and growth plan with that tax reduction. It doesn't work without all 3 working together. The one thing that is attractive about Ed Gillespie's plan is it's phased in, and it recognizes a reliance on those 3 elements. It is a 3-legged stool that won't stand without all 3 legs.
All right, George Goodwin, one of your opponents in this race on the Republican side, Dr. DeCarr, has proposed, he says that if he gets elected, he'll immediately put in legislation to repeal Virginia's income tax. Now, that sounds great. Like, I'm for repealing the income tax. But then you look at the fact that, by law, we have to balance the budget, et cetera. Well, that money's got to be replaced with something. It just can't not have it. So it's got to be a sales tax or something else. Is that just hyperbole from Dr. DeCarr, or is that in Virginia, is that ever going to be a realistic option?
If that is his plan in and of itself, then it's hyperbole. I just said this is a 3-legged stool that won't stand without all 3 legs. We have got to have tax reduction tied to cost reduction and an aggressive, a very aggressive growth plan for economics.
Okay, so at the forum, I asked about Dominion Power, and I was kind of surprised that everybody jumped on this.
That was the one that we all agreed on.
I know that everybody. My question was, look, you guys made a deal. Wagner, Senator Wagner, 2015. You all made a deal that said we're going to hold rates. Rates are down. I mean, if you're a ratepayer, rates are either stable or down. They haven't gone up. That's why it's on nobody's radar screen. I'm talking about your power rates. So Dominion's position is, look, we made a deal. You guys shook hands. We signed it. Rates are down. They're doing exactly what we said they would do. Whether there's a clean power plant or not, you made the deal. Why would you renege on that?
Well, again, we've talked about this before, John, and I don't call it reneging. I call it going back and visiting the reason that Frank Wagner put that bill in the first place, and it was the Clean Power Act. We did not know how that would impact Virginians, so on behalf of Virginians, we, in effect, froze rates. But now the Clean Power Act has gone away. Mm-hmm. This is not reneging. This is going back and revisiting the issue because the conditions have changed.
Why all of a sudden is Dominion Power the bad guy here? Everybody's jumping on him. Perriello, even Lieutenant Governor Ralph Northam is being negative on him. You guys got a pretty good partnership with them. Why all of a sudden are they everybody's bogeyman?
You know, I can't answer that question. I certainly don't view Dominion or any other business in this Commonwealth as a boogeyman. I think sometimes it is used for political purposes.
Right.
But we have to look at things realistically and honestly, based on the issues, and just to throw something out there because we think it may garner us a few more percentage points, I think is disingenuous.
Are you in favor of banning the acceptance of campaign donations from Dominion Power? Because what some legislators who are proposing this, like Senator Chap Peterson, are saying is just saying, look, it's the same General Assembly that's regulating the monopoly that's then taking the money from Dominion Power and their political action committee. How does that make any sense? Are you in favor of not allowing State House members to take money from Dominion or not, George?
Well, I think it's interesting that all of the names that you've thrown up are Democrats first. But no, I'm not in favor of cutting off people's ability. You know, this has already been ruled on in the Supreme Court, that this is a freedom of speech issue, that we have to have a means by which people can speak and have their positions known. And in this day and age, it's changed since Abraham Lincoln ran for office, where he went around to each county seat, stood on a stump, hence stump speech, and he spoke to whoever was there, and they immediately went in and cast their vote. Today, you have to get your message out to people, and like it or not, that takes money. And the only way that the average citizen or a business can get their opinion out there is to help their candidate get their message out. It is a freedom of speech issue.
All right, well, that's going to be the final word for George Goodwin running for Republican nomination for the House of Delegates in the 56th District, which is Henrico, Goochland, Louisa County. That'll be decided in a massive six-way Republican primary on June 13th. But here's the fun thing. Anybody can win, and 27% wins it. 28%, it's a landslide, I think. So you got to get involved in it. George Goodwin, who is the legislative aide for Mark Peake, Senator Peake from Lynchburg. He's also the past legislative aide in Richmond for Tom Garrett, now serving us so ably in Congress. Hey, George, if people want more info on your campaign, where do they go?
Well, first of all, they can go to my webpage. That's georgegoodwinfordelegate.com. And they can go to Facebook, George Goodwin for Delegate. They can email me at george@georgegoodwinfordelegate.com. I will answer at any of those locations. That's the way you can get in touch with me. And my response rate, by the way, on Facebook is 100%, answers within minutes.
I like that, 100%. So if you get elected, you're going to keep that same percentage up, right, George?
That's the way I've operated in the past for both Tom and Mark. I have no reason to change it because it has been successful.
I like that. I like that immediately response. Now, here on the John Fredericks Show, we respond in about, what, Mike, a week and a half, 2 weeks? We need to take a page out of George Goodwin's book and respond to our Facebook post. Thank you, George, for being with us.